Hello and welcome back to the Grow Old Disgracefully podcast, officially named. I'm back and Andy's back. We're here to talk to you today about myth busting. Anything to add to that, Andy, to my beautiful introduction there? It was a bit shit, sorry.
No, not at all, not at all. We're back again. Growing old disgracefully as ChatGPT decided to put down our name, but you have changed it, so we're now
Yeah,
growing old disgracefully.
you
So
know,
yeah, no, all good.
I'm editing genius now, aren't I? I basically just put across through it and then spelt it correct underneath.
That's exactly how it should be. None of this fancy malarkey of getting it redone. Just draw a line through it and get on with it. That's what you used to do
I
in
actually
exams at school.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually think that it sums us up. Like this is going on YouTube, and there's no beautiful. We've not both done our makeup to come on here.
Oh, I
Uh,
have.
yeah. Oh, yes. So I meant Andy has, but I
Yes,
clearly
yes.
haven't, and I'm pretty sure I've still got some breakfast around my mouth. But just turning up to give you the information, the important stuff, and not worrying too much about the other side of things.
Aesthetics of it. Yes.
Yeah, I put this question out on my stories about myth busting, and I didn't get too many responses. I should have put it out again, so apologies, Andy. But one that I did get, I knew that you'd love to talk about, and it was a guy who had been going to the gym, and it was actually a work colleague, but he got told by this person that he was getting too old to strength train, and he was 50. So that
Oh,
me or to lift weights, too old to lift
yeah.
weights. I think that stems from the fact that people feel like they get injured more easily when they're older, but don't realize that those injuries and, well, obviously wear and tear and so on, but don't realize that those things are more likely to happen when you don't have much muscle mass. That's,
Yeah, it's kind of a bit of a catch-22, isn't it? The less muscle mass you have, the more chance of niggles or injuries. And obviously, we've spoken about this in previous podcasts that the numbers don't look good for those who don't strength train as you age, for being able to be mobile as you get into your sort of 70s, etc. But yeah, there's no such thing as being too old. I've got a client who has literally she's just moved into a new bracket with her triathlon training, or triathlon, sorry. She's now 75 and she's still weight training. Like, a lot of it does come down to, I know, as being smart about your training and understanding any limitations that you may have. So, for instance, my client Pat, she has a fake knee, or she's got a new knee that's been in there for
bionic.
about five. Yeah, exactly. The bionic woman. It's been in there for about 5 years. You know, Astagrass squats are probably going to be out, as is like real depth work in terms of knee flexion, but that doesn't mean that everything goes out the window. She can still squat, she can still do leg extensions, leg press, leg curls, stiff leg deadlifts. She can do basically everything she needs to do. It's just maybe not as much flexion as a 20-year-old who's got zero injuries. And I think that's kind of what we've got to look at. I think there are, as we age, we do have to be more aware of our limitations and the things that may cause issues. So, things like at the moment, I'm trying to work around still trying to work around the shoulder niggle. But that's fine. I can work around it. I can work around it. I don't work through it. So it's never painful at all. It's just I need to find the right position to press from. And obviously, you just said that you've been having issues with your back this week. There are still ways that you can work around these things, and I think we kind of have to realise that. Yeah, I'm not going to be setting any new PBs as I age, but that's not really how my training is focused at the moment, so I don't have to worry too much about that.
I think also when you're younger, you can beat yourself up a little bit and just be like, oh, just get on with it. And you kind of get away with it. I definitely am better at listening to what that's telling me now. Like when my back's sore, it's often when I'm run down in other areas and you're more likely to twinge it a bit more because you're tired or so on. So I definitely am better at listening to that. But you would be proud of me, Andy, because I did actually have a nap yesterday. which I never do.
Yes.
Yeah, I did nearly tag you in a post going, Andy would be proud, because I was like, when I was actually going up for a nap, I was like, I said I never nap, but here I am. And I can't say I
Bonus.
slept very much, but I did actually, I did properly chill, like, and go into like a deep relaxation. So I was like, even if I didn't get as much sleep as I would like, it definitely refreshed me. So it had a bonus point there. But no,
Ideal.
strength training for me is the thing that I'm using, not only to be, it's like a now thing, it's helping me feel strong, fit, and healthy now, but I am also future proofing myself, and knowing that.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know how much, because we were saying in a podcast the other day about growing old, is that I don't know if as many people in the past did strength train like we do, or at least not so many women. And we see these people doing amazing things when they're older that have stayed fit and active and healthy and so on, like your dad, for
Yeah.
example. Um, but actually, have we seen how much muscle we can preserve if we are really working on our strength at this age? So that will be interesting to see if it does change a bit, or whether we're just living in a bubble and actually.
Well, you see, there's quite a few kind of high level bodybuilders from the 60s and the 70s that are still in the 80s are still in ridiculously good condition. Um, like for instance, look at Arnold. Arnold's still training in his 80s. Yes, he's maybe had he's I think he put up something this week about having, I'm not sure what he's had replaced, and he's obviously had heart issues, etc. But he's still training, he's still keeping himself ticking over, and he still cycles around cities on his bike when he goes to a different city. So there's still life in us all yet. There was I can't remember who it was, but there was a strength coach who's kind of made a comment of more 21-year-olds need to train like 50-year-olds, and more 50-year-olds need to train like 21-year-olds. And the basics behind that are just more 50-year-olds need to understand that you can push yourself a little bit harder and you can still work hard. And more 21-year-olds need to realise that you need to train with good technique, good form, less ego, and understand and have that nice balance. And yeah, I think actually, do you know what? As we age, I think that's kind of the more beneficial time to start investing in coaching, to help us around these kind of issues that that may start to arise just because of things like wear and tear. I've played 30 odd years of football, so I've got quite a bit of wear and tear now. There are issues that may stem back to that, but because of my knowledge, I can work around these things. If I didn't do what I did, I would probably invest in a coach. In fact, I would invest in a coach just to sort of help me with my training, to help me get around these things. So yeah, it's these things kind of start to move as you age, and these are the things that you need to think about.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. It is working around. There's normally something you can do, rather
Yeah,
than nothing, isn't there? And we could do a whole
absolutely.
episode on Arnie. I don't know. I know that you don't read loads of nonfiction books, but I think you'd probably quite like his. It's read by him on the Audible version as well. So it's
Which one? The autobiography?
yeah, the one, what's
Yeah,
it? The
he's got he's
Arnie
got a couple
Arnold.
now.
No, it's his most recent one. He did a program on it as well. Hang on, I am going to look it up. It is called Be Useful.
Oh, no, I need to have a look into that then.
Yeah,
See, when I first started training, that was the Bible for me when I trained, was Arnold's Modern Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding. I still have it. It is one of the best. It's if you are a young coach getting into the industry, or you're just a youngster, or even somebody our age who's wanting to get into training, go have a look at that book. Some of it you're like, oh wait, as a coach, I'm like, oh, I'm not sure I would do that. But the majority of it, 95% of it's top class. Like, it's a great book.
should we go on to another question? Because you've had quite a, well, I say question. People have shared their myths that they've heard over time. So,
Yes.
protein window, muscle turning to fat. Oh, okay, we'll do it one at a time. Protein window. You're probably the best one to
So
start on this one.
this is an
Yeah.
interesting one because yes, there's a bit behind it, but also there's a kind of caveat to it. So there's not a real there's there's not a huge amount of evidence to suggest that there is a protein window. However, obviously when we train, we do have sort of encourage protein synthesis. So then giving your body protein at that time could hellish be beneficial for helping build muscle or repair or retain muscle. So why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you use it? Why wouldn't you tap into it?
I believe it's a longer, because traditionally they'd say it's 30 to 60 minutes, but I think it's actually
Yeah,
longer than they initially thought. Well, it's, yeah, just like longer. And the other thing is you do want to spread your protein intake throughout the day for muscle protein synthesis
exactly.
anyway. So, yeah, I think that while it can be a myth that you have to go and consume a shit ton of protein immediately after your workout, you're running out the gym, downing that protein shake as you're getting changed, whatever. That's a bit of a myth. But having a higher protein meal or a shake or
Yeah.
whatever in that period after workout is beneficial. I actually find that I just try and time my workouts so that I'm finishing with a meal afterwards anyway. Like, rather, I mean, a shake is useful. There you go. Yeah, see, I'd go for probably yogurt over making
Mm.
up a shake now. I used to do the protein shakes in the mixers, but
So I do a protein shake first thing in the morning because I don't really eat anything until and apart from like a yogurt until lunchtime anyway. So I'm still getting my protein in across the morning, even though I'm not actually taking it in as what you would class as being food. But yeah, I think I'm also one of these weird people that I struggle to eat after training. Whereas I know, for instance, that there are a lot of people who can basically step off the gym floor and start a solid meal. I've never been like that. Even playing football and stuff, I can't intake solid food after training because it just makes me feel horrific. So something like a yogurt's much easier on my stomach. So I can manage to get that in, and it's 25 grams of protein. It's 89 pence from Home Bargains. What's not to love?
you do love a bargain. Was it B&M
Oh,
that you
100%.
quite like?
Home Bargains is the one.
Oh,
If
okay.
Home Bargains are listening to this and want to sponsor the podcast, we'll more than happily be sponsored by Home Bargains.
Do you know, I said something similar on another podcast of mine. I was like, I see grenade bars, for example, I see them as a chocolate bar with a bonus. They're sweet treat. They're not giving you any other nutrients really other than that. But I was like, I do quite like the salted caramel ones. And if, anyone does know grenade bar and they want to send me some, then that's fine. We'll
Absolutely.
just drop these in. I had something in here that I really wanted to say about protein, but it's bloody gone. Sorry, Andy's got me with slightly less tired than yesterday, but not as fully functioning. But what I was going to say is the whole not eating breakfast that Andy was saying after a workout, before a workout or whatever. I struggle with that. I have to have something in the morning anyway, so different there.
Mm.
Post workout, if it's a higher intensity workout, I can really struggle to eat. But what I do find is if I don't eat anything, and this is worth bearing in mind, some people might have heard of the term the rungries if they're runners, which is is that later in the day, you can suddenly feel like you're really hungry. So having something small like Andy's talking about there can actually then give you enough to refuel you so that later in the day, you're not like, why am I so hungry? I'm never hungry
Yeah.
after a workout, but in the evening I always am. Well, it could still be an effect from that more intense training. That's what I was going to say, Andy.
Yeah. The Rungries or the Hangries, one of the two.
Oh, I get hungry, I think.
Oh, I think everybody gets hangry, but some certain people can like cover it up better. Like I'm
Yeah.
really bad when I'm hungry. I'm horrific. Like
I,
basically like the Incredible Hulk. It's just not fun.
and I think, well, the thing is, I don't let myself get too hungry that often. My husband showed me one of those memorial benches. It was on Instagram and it said, for Barbara, who was like a nightmare when hungry, but otherwise pretty solid. I was like, that's
I
me. That's
like
me.
that.
I need a bench like that. She was a nightmare when she's hungry, but otherwise pretty solid. Yeah. Okay. So the whole intermittent fasting thing actually leads me nicely onto one of your other questions as well, because somebody said that anything that Stacey Sims says is a myth. Now, Stacey Sims, for those of you that don't know, she is very much into doing research specific to women's training. Like she says that a lot of the studies done are done on men, and that we need to be doing more research that is specific to women and training. I'm going to be cautious what I say here because I've heard of a few controversial things from Stacey Sims, but I don't know that I don't know that there's much to say that it is bullshit, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Are you the
I'm
same,
kind of
Andy?
similar. I kind of had a look into this one, and um, a lot of the stuff actually makes sense that she does come up with. But the caveat to this one is that she's been on Stephen Bartlett's podcast. She's done stuff with the Zoe, like the insulin tracking stuff, which then makes me kind of a bit more skeptical about what's coming out. I've not actually listened to any of the stuff that she's put out, so I'll need to go back and do that, and we can come back and maybe revisit this myth at a different point. But currently, I'm um, unlike I usually am, I'm sitting on the fence on this one because I'm normally camping. But
Mm.
this one I'm sitting on the fence. I'm not sure. Um, I know that I know that other people have covered in other podcasts about the fact that she does talk shite, but I'm still trying to find what it is that's been said that is the controversy kind of side of stuff. But again, I'll need to look into it a bit more.
I have looked at a couple of her bits, and again, she recommends high intensity interval training for women, as well as because she works a lot with endurance athletes, runners and so on as well. And actually, there's a lot of evidence to show that high intensity interval training, along with strength training, is going to help preserve bone density as we age as well, with or without HRT if you're a woman. And so that's likely right. People haven't liked her view on zone 2 training. I find that going out for running in particular, if I'm staying at a relatively steady zone, zone 2, and I don't actually do it like heart rate zones, but it would probably be zone 2 some of the time, my recovery is going to be good afterwards. So those days where I don't really want to be pushing hard, but I still want to be active, I would say it's reasonably useful, but I don't do it as a zone 2 training. Um, yeah, so again, I'm going to be a bit like Andy and just go, I hear lots of positives said about her. The only thing that I ever had to say negative about her was because I was offended. Personally offended. When it was years ago, it was during COVID, I read her book, Women Are Not Small Men. And I remember reading it, and she said in it, and at the time, I was probably, well, I wasn't dissimilar sized to I am now. I might have, don't know, I might have been smaller. I can't remember, but there or thereabouts. And she put up the thing, and there is some science to back it up, but about how if you measure your wrist and it's a certain size, then it's a sign that you are likely overweight. And I measured it, and it was. And I was like, but I know I'm not overweight. My mind was just offended, offended at that
Yeah.
point. So I was like, well, I
It's
don't
not
know if I can
it's
trust
not the
anything else she
first
says.
it's not the first point of contact that I would have with somebody being overweight. Like there are massively other things. Maybe you just do a lot of forearm work, that your wrists are big, or you maybe spend a bit too much time masturbating. It's maybe
I was
just
going to ask.
tam it down on that when you've got one massive forearm on one side and then one wee shrinky riddled one on the other side.
Exactly. I mean, let's not get into measuring men's forearms at all. But it was. I don't know. I didn't love that, but there are other ways of measuring your whether.
Yeah, there are other ways that I would work that out, and wrist circumference. Albeit, if there's scientific evidence to back, it's still not something I would use as my first port of call.
I think it's meant to be done along with other measurements.
Yeah,
Like if you're doing your waist and your wrist, maybe, and so.
yeah.
But yeah, so no, I think I'm afraid whoever was saying that, it's not that we're saying everything she says is brilliant. It's just saying that there's not loads of stuff out there about the controversial things that she said. And a lot of the stuff she says is stuff that,
Maybe, yes. To be fair, it's basically Google search that we use to try and find this stuff, or ChatGPT to find out about what it is. And they may just do a good job of covering it up. That's maybe what it is. But
yeah,
yeah,
or
you
maybe
never
she
know.
maybe on a podcast, maybe if we listen to that podcast episode that you're
She's
talking about,
slipping in some
because sometimes I think people,
misinformation.
yeah, I was listening to a guy recently who is really well known and he's great, but then you hear them say something that you know isn't true, and then it makes you doubt everything else. You're like, I know that's
Yeah,
not true. Like I know I really have looked at the research in this, and it's not true. And but they say it so confidently that you're like, actually, is that so? She could be one of those that says stuff, and you're like, okay, maybe not. Um,
yes, exactly.
So, Andy, how about this whole I'm not training anymore, so all my muscle is now going to turn into fat?
Yeah, I think that's one that we've heard for years and years that that's going to be the case. Sadly, I don't think it's going to happen. Even things like losing muscle mass takes a fair amount of sedentary time and inactivity. So you having your muscle turn into fat probably isn't something that you should ever have to worry too much about.
Well, you actually have a certain number of fat cells anyway. Like, so what age is it? Like when you get to adulthood, you've already got the number of fat cells you're going to have. And this is why, actually, in a sense, if you were to go and have, I heard it said before that if you were to go and have liposuction, whatever it's called, and you're cutting off those fat cells, if you were to regain the fat, it would then go around your organs potentially instead. So, you put fat wherever, but you kind of have that number of fat cells. So it's not going to suddenly start going to your muscles. Your muscles aren't going to turn into fat, but you might feel like it looks like fat if you get muscle wastage loss, like muscle
Yeah,
atrophy. Because then you're going to get that sagging. You might be like, oh, they're fat now, but actually you've gained. You can be fat and muscly, and if you lose muscle mass, you might feel that you look a bit like fatter, if that makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah, but no, sorry, muscle isn't going to turn into fat. That is a myth. It's an easy one because it's just not true, but it does shrink. Muscle does shrink when it's not being used. Not that Andy would know, would you, Andy?
I don't know about that. I'm sitting kind of fluffy at the moment, that's for sure.
It's winter. Actually, I did hear something the other day that literally said that and I need to go, I should have looked it up for the podcast, but over winter, we always say that you eat a bit more when it's colder and things like that. And obviously, you don't want to go extreme, but I think again, am at peace with the fact that I might gain a little bit over winter, but all that happens then is I resume my normal spring-like activities. I start, doing other things. You maybe are a little bit more active. I don't crave those real carby, or not even carby, but those real filling meals so much as it gets brighter outside. And then the weight just comes off. So I feel like fluffy is a winter thing, and it's easier because you're
Yeah,
not
yeah, it's
in
easier because you can
TV.
obviously get out for more steps in the evening rather than getting to 5 o'clock at night and basically hibernating. So yeah, things become much easier in the springtime, sort of summertime. So roll on.
Oh, I can't wait, Andy. I am so done with. I mean, it's sunny here today, but I am ready for those lighter evenings that are coming, and for it just to be warm sun on my skin. I've had a few clients going on holiday recently, and they've had pictures. I'm like, I just want, yeah, I want some of that
Your next
sunshine.
workouts are going to suck.
Yeah, you're
Basically,
doing
it's going
split
to be
squats.
and burpees as a superset and press
Split,
ups. Split
yeah,
squats,
exactly.
burpees, and press ups as a superset. Screw you.
I should do a return from holiday punishment session for those. But no,
Call it
I'm
that.
going. I can't do that because I'm going away in the summer, and they'll be like, are you gonna be doing that?" Like,
No,
no, no, I'm
no,
not.
I will not.
Um, yeah. So next one that was said is creatine being bad for you. Um,
Yeah, 'cause I think we had another one as well, creatine being bad for you, but also creatine leading to sort of like the fat gain as well. So number one, creatine's not bad for you. Your body actually sort of synthesizes creatine itself from things like red meat. So actually, it's in your body as body prior to you supplementing it, but just not in huge doses. So the reason that we look at creatine is it is probably the most researched supplement that's on the market. Again, maybe not. It's probably not being studied in terms of for female use than male use, but the science and studies that are starting to come through now, I think there's a few more that are starting to show. But it's good for lean muscle mass. It's good for there's potential endurance benefits from it as well. And there's a lot coming out now about cognitive function as well. So things like dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, all this kind of stuff. So as we age, obviously, brain activity starts to slow down. Creatine looks like it may be something that's quite helpful for that too. The kind of biggest myth that you have with creatine, number one, is it's bad for you. I remember hearing back in the day, creatine's a steroid. No, it's not at all. That's bullshit, number one. And number two, I think people worry about the weight gain that comes with creatine. They think it's body fat, which not. It's water retention, but it's not water retention in a bad way. It's basically intramuscular. So when you take in creatine, it sucks water into the muscle cells, so you will look more jacked, basically. I've this is probably the longest spell I've had taking creatine for years. I just started to implement 5 grams a day probably the last like 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And I'm also remembering to take it. So it's not like I'm not taking it. I remember to take it for 3 days and then not for 2 weeks. I've actually been every day because it goes in my protein shake in the morning. And although I'm feeling slightly fluffier, I feel that my muscles look fuller, which is like it's a nice feeling. I feel like I look leaner up top because there's more, obviously, looks like there's more definition. That's the only real thing that I can attribute to it at the moment. But yeah, it's people worry about water retention and they think that they're going to feel like they're going to look fat or they're going to look like they're overweight with it. You would never notice that. That's not the water retention you need to worry about. So yeah, there's a lot of myths around creatine. Things like creatine for kids as well. Creatine for kids is probably actually a very good idea. But because of things like schools not wanting kids to take protein shakes, certain federations in sports try to tell you not to let your kids take creatine or protein, etc., it becomes a bit vilified, and it's not. There's nothing there. There's no reason to vilify it. So it's miseducation if you're vilifying creatine.
Yeah, no, 100%. And creatine is something that when you do start taking it and you see that weight spike that you might see, which won't be loads, but you might see a weight spike, people will often panic at that point and think that they've gained fat, but you're not going to keep going up. So if you've got a fat loss goal and you continue doing your actions, you'll see it coming back down anyway, regardless of taking creatine. It's just that the creatine is there, like Andy said, it's water. Essentially, you gained a bit of water weight. That the only negative that creatine would have is if you took too much of it, it could give you a little bit of an upset tummy. That's it.
Which is why I always found it hilariously funny that there's a kind of the old school method of taking creatine was to load it. So basically taking
Yes.
10 to 20 grams a day for like 7 days. The amount of time that would be spent in the toilet at that point is not going to be worth the 10 to 20 grams. Just going at a standard 5 grams a day and stick it daily and just keep going at it. Like they kept worrying about saturating cells, etc. Well, 20 grams, what you're doing at the back end is probably getting rid of most of that creatine anyway. So actually, we don't know how much of the creatine is actually saturating your cells when you're, shall we say, pulling through the eye of a needle.
Yeah. Well, it's consistency over time with everything, isn't it? I've got one of those. I take mine in a capsule form. It does mean you have to take like 4 of the capsules to get your dose. So they say 3 to 5 grams as and Andy, you're heavier than than me, hopefully.
Yeah,
But I have to take 4 of the capsules, but I'd still rather do that because I'm taking other supplements. So I
yeah,
put it in my month kind of pot.
yeah.
And I take it consistently. But the other thing to be said for creatine is once you I have been taking it for a while. If you did miss a few days, it's not going to be the end of the world because you still got that creatine there. So it isn't one that's like the effect is daily. And if you miss it, then
Yeah,
you've done it. It's best just to take it consistently and then go with the fact that occasionally you might miss it and it's not going to make a great deal of
yeah,
difference.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any of I've got them open here, but is there any that you want to cover next? Because we've got creatine leads to fat. We've done that one. Oh, it says your favourite. So you've obviously been passionate about that in the past, Andy, about creatine.
Yeah.
What about the being sore, the DOMS being meaning that you've
Yeah, it's
worked hard?
the kind of the myth. Obviously, the myth behind DOMs is that the sooner you are, the better the workout you had, which isn't particularly true. However, it is nice to feel a bit sore after a training session because it does make you feel like you've worked. So there's that kind of catch 22 where DOMs don't actually mean that you have had a good session. For a lot of people, DOMs might actually mean that you've done too much. But at the same point, in my head, because I still have quite an old school mentality with my training, if I'm not sore, I'm a bit like, oh, and I'm not talking about to the point where I can't actually, if I've done quads, I can't walk. If I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh, quads are a bit spicy, like a wee bit tingly. That is a good feeling for me, but it doesn't mean that I've not had a good workout. The things that you look at with your workouts are things like your the load that you lift, your volume across a session, how you've recovered. These are more important factors that you need to look at. Um, Muscle soreness isn't one of them. That's a very, very old school mentality, but it's still a mentality that I do actually have. But I have to try to temper it slightly because I know myself that that's not a good measuring scale of how my session's been. But I still enjoy feeling a bit tender the next day.
There's a difference, isn't there? Because I'll do that. I'll kind of have a training session, and then the next day I'll go for a run or walk, and I'll be like, "Oh, my legs are a bit achy from that session." That I would say is a fairly normal after a workout. If you're getting to the point
Absolutely.
that every single session you're having, you're getting to the point where you can't walk afterwards, you're struggling to sit down on the loo, and we've all had those sessions. Don't get me wrong, and you will likely have those sessions at the beginning when you first do a leg session and you haven't trained in a while, or it's a new block or whatever. You might find that you're like, God, I'm really feeling it. But they shouldn't be an every session thing, and they don't mean that you have had a better workout. But if you're having them all the time, then likely you're training a bit hard. I'd be worried about, because it's basically your muscles have been micro tears that are happening. They've got a
Yeah.
lot to
Well,
repair in that time as well.
also, as well, I think we forget that if you are too sore, the likelihood of you going back in and doing another training session are going to be pretty low. Um, it's going to be quite an easy way to get your head out of, nah, I'm not training today, I'm too sore. So, as somebody who trains, I train 6 days a week, it's something I've done for years, it's something that my body's used to. If I'm too sore, the chances of me getting my 6 sessions in the week isn't going to be high. So I have to temper my expectations of the DOMs that I have in a session. And also, this is how I train. This is how I train in the way forward. Like the thing that screws me up just now is football. So like I will train I play 5-a-sides on a Tuesday and a Friday. The day after that, I'm generally pretty painful because it's short, sharp sprints, change of direction, obviously different movements like striking a ball, jumping, etc., which isn't massively in my training. Like I'm basically a bro split, so I'm going to be a bit sore in a bit. So I have to try and work my training around those days. So I'm not going to do a leg session after on a Wednesday or a Saturday because my legs are usually a bit wrecked after football. Everything else is fine, so I can do upper body, I can do chest, shoulders, back, arms, but I would stay away from that. But again, it's about tempering these things and making sure that you can get the best out of what you've got in front of you.
And looking at what your goals are, like Andy's just said, often I would be training women for fat loss. They're training and they've got a fat loss goal alongside. If they are training so hard in the gym that then their general activity outside the gym massively drops because they feel like they're aching so much, that's not going to be beneficial for them. If they are an athlete or they're like running and doing things like that, if they're then not able to do that other sport that they enjoy, then that becomes an issue. So it is again about balance. If you are doing so much in the short period of time in the gym that you then can't do other things outside, then we have issues.
Absolutely, I think
Yeah.
that's it. And that's it's kind of hits the nail on the head. It's about being able to train, but also being able to do everything else that you need to do. Like if you're struggling to carry your shopping up the stairs because you live in the second floor of a block of flats because you've trained and you're literally struggling, it's not a good place to be. It's you know yourself. If your legs are too tender, sitting down in the toilet's not a fun experience. It's not fun. Trying to get up's even worse.
Have you ever broken a toilet roll holder trying to get off the loo? I
I've
haven't,
broken a
but I
toilet.
have.
I've broken a toilet seat by
Trying to
but
get,
because but
was
trying
it
to
because
get
you
up.
slammed down? Oh, I didn't know if it was because you got
No,
to that point
I
and you're like,
was.
oh.
I, no, I sat down in it. I sat down and I was like, it was one of those ones where you would have used the toilet roll holder. This toilet roll holder in the toilet was like one of these boxes, which was already open because they'd obviously been changing the toilet roll. I can't do that because I'm going to rip it off there. So I used both hands to push myself off the seat and snap the toilet seat in half.
Oh, oh, wow, Andy,
So
that's DOMS to the extreme, isn't it?
absolutely. And then, shall we say, it took me about 5 minutes from that point to try and move because there's sharp edges, and a naked back end doesn't go well.
The next two questions I'm going to put together because I think they do go nicely together. So you've got lifting weights makes women bulky and then being toned. And the reason I'm putting them together is because if you want to be toned, you probably want to lift weights. So you probably want to be lifting weights and building that muscle mass because being toned is building muscle really. And so the whole toned word, I know that people that work in fitness don't like it particularly because it's people saying they want to be leaner, but I do understand what people mean by it, so I don't get offended by the word toned because I'm like, I know what
Yeah.
they're saying they're worried about,
Kind.
yeah, they're saying they want to lose a bit of body fat and build a bit of muscle. That is what I believe that they're trying to say. They want to be lean, defined, but they are worried. Normally, the people that are saying that are then worried about getting bulky, which is much harder to do than people give it
Yeah.
credit for.
It's
You've been trying years and years, Andy, haven't you? Working at being
exactly,
bulky.
and I'm still built like a gable end of a 5 pound note. But no, I think you're right. It's the word tone's an interesting one. I think it's if you were to look at any for instance, a bodybuilding competition, I'm pretty sure within what these judges are looking for is toned muscle. So actually, toned makes sense. But the reason that we find it, I think we would probably find the word toned a bit more offensive as if you're a bloke because it comes across as being quite a feminine word, which is not the case at all. It basically just means definition. It means you're looking for more defined muscles, whether that just be that they've tightened up or that you want them to be bigger. It doesn't matter. It's exactly the same thing. You just need to look at it. It's dependent on how you look at that word. Um, but
Yeah.
what are you going to say? Go for it.
No, I was actually just thinking about I've used that word as an offensive term to a guy that I work with in the gym when I was working at the gym.
Honestly, if you said it to a bloke who's trying to gain size, you went, "Oh, you're looking toned." What?
Yeah.
What? What did you just say? What did you say to me?
His wife told me, she was like, if you ever want to offend Nick, just tell him his arms are looking small. And I was like, noted. And he'd been doing a bit more running and but obviously lifting as well. But I think his arms are always looking pretty good. But I was like, oh, Nick, your arms are looking so toned at the moment. Are you trying to lean down? And
I can imagine his.
just
I can imagine his ego just was like it was like a balloon and a pin.
yeah,
That was it.
yeah. And obviously he
Done.
knew exactly that I'd been set up by his wife. I mean, really,
Yeah.
it was bullying Andy. It wasn't very nice, but you need to be
So
careful.
as long as it has it, as long as it's in good spirit, bullying's fine.
I
Um,
did rein it in because
uh,
I did also draw a picture of a stick man and I put it in the
with
on a
huge arms.
whiteboard. No, I put short shorts, tiny arms. And then I think I
Nice.
put like, and then I labeled it and I went, who is it? But
Yeah.
it just became
The
a bit of a
the
joke.
yeah.
Yeah.
The sort of females worried about getting bulky is quite a funny one because I always like this question. I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? So if you are worried about getting too bulky, take a step into any commercial gym, right, at a busy time. And I can probably guarantee you, out of the men that are in the gym, the young guys that are in the gym, 99% of them are trying to get massive. It's basically that's basically what the goal is. Like if you set foot in a commercial gym and there's guys in there from 16 to 25, most of them are chasing, they want to be bigger. How many of them actually are? You'll have your few genetic outliers, so lads that are like stacked anyway, and then you'll obviously have the other guys that are obviously taking some performance
Juicing.
enhancers as well.
Mhm.
So they're you take them out as well. But the majority of, regardless of what they say, the majority of men, even now, I'm 42, I'm still chasing size. I'll catch it one day. I'll probably end up in a box, but I'll catch it at some point. But these guys are chasing size and they're training towards being bigger. How many of them actually are? Not that many. So, as a female wandering into the gym worrying about being bulky, you don't have to worry too much because if you're training correctly, training towards a goal, the number one defining factor is nutrition for the majority of it. Is the fact that as long as you're sitting at maintenance, or if you are sitting in a deficit, yes, you can build muscle, but you're not going to become the incredible Hulk overnight. You need to be eating at a surplus to do that. So the chances of you, unless that, as a female, if that's your goal to get bigger, you need to eat at a surplus. We can build muscle in a deficit, you can build muscle at maintenance, but the most optimal circumstance for your nutrition to get size is to be in a surplus. And that's majority of people who worry about getting bulky aren't in a surplus. So I would never stress too much about that. You can get strong as fuck, you can get lean and toned as much as you want, but actually chasing size, you need to train and eat towards chasing size. And that's something that the majority of people aren't doing. So I wouldn't stress too much about it.
And you're not just going to suddenly end up there. So if you did kind of think, oh, actually, I've been consistently training for a long time and I feel like I'm not loving the way I'm looking at the moment, you could rein it in a bit because you would have had to be training quite a lot and, eating that way. You can adapt and change it. So you don't need to worry. It's not just going to suddenly you go to the gym and you're like, bring, I'm too bulky.
I,
And the other thing that I had that I really liked recently was a lady pointing out the fact for those women, particularly midlife, that are worried about training, getting bulky. She was like, how many old women do you see? And you say, oh, they've got too much muscle. Build the strength now, build the muscle mass now, and use it in the future. But not doing that now is going to have a massive impact on your future independence.
and that is I think that's a massive one that we need to look at, especially in terms of as we age, with things like, obviously, especially when it comes to females, is you should be chasing muscle, and we're not talking about looking like Arnold, like, because the chances of that are going to be slim to none. So you need to be chasing muscle, chasing strength. Strength and muscle are your two main things to be able to help you with longevity of life. It's as simple as that. Like, if you want to have a long, healthy, happy life, being stronger with more muscle mass is going to help. It's as simple as that. We know that. It's we know that as being scientifically proven. So, don't freak out about the fact that you're trying to build muscle. And I know it's a difficult thing. It's easy for me to say that, it's an easy thing to say, but to get your mindset around that change of not worrying about it, especially the fact that how many females have you worked with over the time that you've worked in this job, or as a coach? Thousands,
Yeah.
and how many of them have been in a surplus?
Oh, not very many. I wouldn't
You
say not
probably count.
intentionally, right? Yeah,
Well, that
very
that's
few.
that's the thing. It's not intentionally. If you're working with a coach, probably single, one-handed. I've worked with a few females that have been sort of physique competitions, etc. So have been in a surplus. And it's a tiny minority of the number of people, including males as well, I would say. The
Yeah.
majority of males that I work with, relative, very few of them end up in a surplus because they all want
Yeah.
to get leaner and stronger. So we sit at maintenance. It's much easier to do. It's a nice place to sit. So yeah,
That takes you back to that whole that bulking phase and cutting phase that bodybuilders used to do, that they don't do so much anymore, but they used to do that more, where they get a
yeah,
bit fluffy. Like, we'll just call it
yeah.
winter. We're in our bulking phase. Um, but but they do, it doesn't happen so much anymore. People are tending to uh, do it to less
There's more
extremes, I think.
knowledge. There's more knowledge now, so you get more guys. Especially the way that I think like modern bodybuilding's gone is it's become a bit more about condition, about how you look rather than or personally I like the sort of classic sort of look as the ones, not the genetic freaks that look like genetically, these genetically modified bulls that are humongous. To get a good physique, you don't have to stress about that. That's like this bulk and cut and stuff. Just settle in for the long term. Because I think people think that this bulk and cut and stuff makes it quicker. It doesn't. Settle in for the long
No,
term. Let's have a look at longevity of your training and getting all these building blocks in place to get the goal at the end of it, rather than doing this flipping from between eating shed loads and putting on too much body fat to then having to cut down.
it
It's
doesn't
if
make
you
it
settle in, yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. But if I think about yo-yoing as well, if I probably inadvertently did that before, because I was always like, oh, eating a bit too much, so I'll eat a bit less. And when I actually started gaining more muscle, even though I'd been training for a while, was when I just started eating consistently, like
yeah,
probably maintenance. I say consistently being that maybe I'd have a day or so that was a little bit higher and a day or so that were a little bit lower, whatever it is, but consistently eating my meals, consistently getting that balanced nutrition, rather than trying to not eat so much on that day because I'd overeaten, the other day. So I do
yeah,
think that in all of it, consistency is key. And if you're thinking about muscle protein synthesis, then you are going to be wanting to spread that nutrition out in a
yeah,
more balanced way during the day, which you don't tend to do if you're yo-yoing all the time and going really low,
yeah.
higher.
That's
So
it.
anyway, that was a bit of a side note on that, but it does lead us
Yes.
nicely onto starvation mode, because one of your questions here is about the myth of starvation mode. So the fact that you often get told that the reason you're not losing weight is because your body's gone into starvation mode. And the truth is that if you're in a calorie deficit, even if you might not realize you're in a calorie deficit because you're eating high volume foods and it feels like you're eating a lot, those sorts of things, you will be losing body fat over time. Might be the scales don't show it initially, but that could be because you've eaten a higher carb meal or a bit of water weight there, bit of inflammation, whatever it is. But you don't hold fat if you're in a calorie deficit. Your body isn't going into starvation mode. But I do think you'll see it if you are eating in a consistent way, then you will see less of the extreme fluctuations that you might see if you're yo-yoing around a bit. Do you want to give us a bit of a take on it, Andy, the
No,
starvation mode?
to be fair, I think you've just nailed that. You've nailed it down. That's exactly it. It's something. It's a myth that sadly people held on to because you weren't losing weight. So I must be in starvation mode.
I think
Mm,
I
yeah.
think I was told it by a nurse in the doctors once after having my son, my eldest. I went into the doctors for like a
Oh,
thyroid check, and I think the nurse said to me, "It's because you're not eating enough." But actually, what it was in truth is that I tried to. This was years. My son's 15 now. I tried to go really low in calories because less is better, clearly, um, and I wasn't able to do that consistently. But you don't
yeah.
even notice when you're often, I know for me, I wouldn't notice that I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so hungry. I'm going to have this high calorie, super calorie dense snack, because of the fact that I needed something. It wasn't nutritious. You just reach for whatever's closest because, of course, you're going to, because you're not eating enough. But it
And
takes you to
that's it. And
maintenance.
that's Yeah, exactly. And that takes you to maintenance, so you don't move in. I think it's under reporting is generally the reason that people think like this is just the fact that, you didn't mention the fact that you had to drive through a McDonald's drive-through because you were so hungry that you've been on such low calories. I've been on low calories for the whole week, but what happened? Yeah.
Well, mine would have been, if I think back as well, I still love baking and cooking, but I would definitely be testing the mixture. Doesn't count.
And my own taste and my own taster.
Yeah, the raw mixture, like, just didn't, it's not a cake
Oh,
yet, is it? So,
clean.
whatever.
Oh yeah, scraping the bowl. That was the highlight of any form of baking. Scraping the bowl is the damage.
I, as a child, one of us would get the spoon, one would get the bowl, and it'd have to swap because it'd be
Did
like,
you ever get?
you
Do
know,
you know how you get like the electrical mixers? Did you ever get
yeah.
this from that? So you're
I,
sitting like this with your tongue.
I still would do that, Andy. If I,
Oh, I still do as well. 100%. I still do as well.
I absolutely love it. And then with cooking, I think again, parents, you'll get this with your little one. You'll often end up just like picking at bits of that they've eaten, but then it's kind of saying to yourself, like, do I really want to eat a like squidged up bit of crust when I
Dri-
could have
aye,
a,
dri-
oh,
dribbled on chicken nugget.
yeah, exactly. So the whole starvation mode is you're probably not eating enough proper food,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
you're then
That's
going to be, because of that, you're going to be having more. And I know that that can be hard to see, and I know that it would be really nice to think that we're doing everything right and it's just our body working against us. That would be reassuring, wouldn't it? But
Yeah,
annoyingly,
but
normally
and
we have to.
sadly it's not the easy option to it's not the easy option that's the reason, is it? So sadly
Yeah,
that's what we look. It's not an excuse. It's not that we're looking for excuses. It's we're looking for reasons, and sadly we always find that the easy reason rather than the real reason. That's just basically that's human nature.
sometimes, and I've definitely done this so many times in the past, is that I want that reason. I want it to be because
Oh
of
yeah,
X, Y, or Z. And then there becomes a moment where you're like, oh no, it's me, I'm the problem, it's me. And actually, we do need to take that time to be introspective, to know that there are things that we can do, that we can change, and to be honest with ourselves. So it's not that Andy and I are here going, if you're not doing this, we all do it. It would be lovely to think that we are absolutely spot on, but sometimes we do actually need to be completely honest and take the time to be honest, because you might not even notice when these things are happening, and you might not be slowing down enough to realize that there are other elements
or
at play here.
you're just ignoring the fact that it's like occasionally I'm like, well, I'm going to cut a bit of meat. I'm ignoring the fact that I'll just go home bargains. I'm going to get myself a little bit of that, a little bit of this. Straight away, I push myself over my calorie limits for the day. So yeah, I think
I,
it's that's life. It's about I need to turn and go. Yes, it's me. I'm the issue. I need to deal with this, and it's just about it's just about being genuine with yourself, isn't it?
yeah, and then even then, it's going, well, the only way really that I can make sure that this isn't keeping happening is to not wing it. Because I don't know about you,
Yeah,
Andy, if you're winging it, then you're going to go into home bargains and be like, I'm going to grab that. But if you're like, well, I've got this lunch and I already know what I'm getting for lunch and I've had that,
yeah,
then you know you can hold out, you know what's coming, you can feel more organized, you're not going to be constantly in reaction mode. That
yeah.
makes a difference. In fact, I got a message from a lady that I started working with last week, and she said, one routine, this isn't a myth, but I just think it's interesting because it's one routine that's made such a difference. And she said, the evening routine is really working for me. Combining that with the calorie range has taken away almost all of the food noise in my head. It's so refreshing. I know what I'm doing, so don't stand staring at the fridge or the supermarket shelf or whatever on office days, and I'm not worrying if I'm a few calories over, because she knows what's coming. It's just having that element of feeling in control as you go into your day. So yeah, I'm like you, Andy. If I take a moment to go, well, actually, why am I suddenly reaching for biscuits more often than I would have?
Yeah,
Then I can go, it's because I haven't been organising my food the rest of the
yeah,
day.
that's it.
Yeah.
It's simple, isn't it? Simple stuff.
It really is. Gyms are full of dickheads. The
Yeah,
wrong gyms.
I,
I'm
well,
not
yeah,
saying that, by
wrong.
the way. It's written in. That isn't just me
Yeah,
just announcing.
the wrong gyms. I always find this one an interesting one because I know that there are a few things that you see pop up on social media, like people putting videos up about folk being really judgmental in gyms and stuff like that. And yes, there are a number of people that are judgmental, but there are also the decent people think they're pricks as well. That's the thing. I know. I don't know if do you follow Joey Slow on.
Yeah, he's always calling people out, isn't
He's
he?
honestly right. He may look like a fucking
Do
meathead,
better.
but do better. Like, see most of the stuff. See, like he's got such a good point. Like, most gyms police themselves. Most gyms police themselves, and the dickheads don't last very long unless your gym is full of wanks.
Unless
That's
they
just a
own it.
sad. Yeah, well, that's the thing. I've got somebody that I know who's training. It's down south somewhere, and she's looking to move away from the gym because the owner, the guy who's managing it's a wank. So it's like the Wild West. Whereas I train at a JD gym, which could be all manner of people from all manner of walks of life, and it self polices. It's one of the management and the staff in there are class. They tell people to put their weights away. They tell people to clean up after themselves. But also the members also do that as well. So you've got members going, "Are you finished with that? Yeah. Do you mind putting it away?" So it polices itself. So yeah, I think if you're nervous and anxious about going to the gym, these thoughts are the first thing in your mind. So you're going to worry about the gym being full of assholes. 95% of people going to the gym, actually, gyms become quite a big community. Like, people are there. You're all there after the same thing. You're all there to get better at whatever it is you're trying to get better at. So a lot of the time, it's been very supportive and very, very a lot of camaraderie.
And what I would say is going back to the whole starvation mode, it's like, what is the narrative? Like, where's your evidence to support the fact that gyms are full of dickheads? Is it actually because really you are scared of the gym and that is giving you permission to not go or not try? And then again, I completely get it. So then it's like, well, how can I make it so I'm not so scared of going to the gym? How can I prove to myself that it's not full of dickhead? Well, firstly, do a bit of research and look at the reviews for the gyms that you're going to. And if you're a woman, maybe go to one that you can see they have loads of females that go there as well, or whatever, like different classes going on. Um, but when you go in, there's a couple of things that I would do if I was nervous of going to the gym. And one would be that either I would go, okay, I'm going to go in and use a couple of the machine weights just to feel comfortable because they're there. Or I'd grab a bench. I'd go and set myself up a bench in the corner and I would do exercises based around that bench and just stick to that area, just in that zone, which I've done in busy. I do that in a busy gym. If I'm traveling at all, I'm in a really busy gym, I will plan a workout that doesn't need to use loads of different equipment and I will hang out around my bench and that's it.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
So
a good way to do it. It's a really good way to do it. And it kind of keeps you. Well, I think it's a sad one because it's sad in terms of obviously both of us have obviously trained in commercial gyms. We know that the gyms can be massively supportive, very community driven places, and it's sad that it's the same in any walk of life. The minority sadly ruin it, and we have to kind of walk at the pace of the slowest member of society. And unfortunately, there's dicks in every walk of life, whether it's work, whether it's in the gym, whatever it is. And sometimes you just need to fucking ignore them and just get on with it, because the majority of the people there are decent people who will help you if you ask. And I
yeah.
think that's kind of something that we need to, I understand people being anxious and stuff, but and about going to a gym, but honestly, it's probably the least thing, the last thing you need to worry about is being welcomed in, because it's why I
And
love what I do. This is,
the gym communities are normally lovely, and those guys that
yeah,
actually that you might think are the most intimidating are actually likely to be the ones that will really just want to help you if you were to ask. The ones that you're less
yeah,
likely to get a response from are probably the newbies that are a bit nervous themselves. They'll keep themselves to themselves and just
yeah,
quietly. But those women, those men that have been going to the gym for a while, they will, most of them, unless they're like Andy and have been going to the gym since he was a kid, they will remember how it feels to feel intimidated going to the gym themselves.
yeah. There's a guy that trains up at GD called Mike. Mike's probably mid 70s now. Mike trained with Arnold back in the day. in across in America. He went over. He was a bodybuilder back in the day. He's in his mid-70s. He looks like Flash Gordon. He's got white long hair. He's about 6'6". He's an absolute, but he is the biggest gentleman you'll ever meet. Like he is, and he makes everybody feel welcome in the gym. Although you would look at him and go, "Holy shit, he is a monster." And that's the kind of beauty of the kind of gym community is that just because the guy looks like he's a scary guy, completely wrong. Like it's if anything, it's the complete opposite.
And I think that's the other thing, right? If you don't want people to come over, and they won't normally anyway, but sometimes say
No,
somebody came over to you and said, "Oh, I've noticed that you're doing this." Take it in the spirit intended. If they're there trying to help you, they're there trying to help you. I mean, sometimes you see it on Instagram where people are correcting an exercise that I remember a guy I knew was doing he was doing, I don't know if it was good mornings or something like that, and somebody didn't realize he was doing good mornings and came over to correct him and tell him he was doing his exercise wrong. But you know, you will get people that don't understand that there are different exercises and you're actually not going for that one. But on the whole, if somebody's coming over, it's either because they're a PT themselves, they're very experienced, and they've noticed that you're doing something that maybe isn't safe. They're not there trying to make you look stupid or feel stupid.
yeah,
They're trying to be helpful. And I think, again, we need to go, why am I feeling offended? It's probably because we're feeling a bit embarrassed because you feel like somebody's seen you doing something wrong. It doesn't matter. We all make mistakes. It's how we learn. You know, you do something wrong once,
some
you're less likely to do it again.
sometimes it's also they're coming over to ask what you're doing because they're like, "Oh, that's interesting. I might
Yeah.
try that as well." You know, the number of times that people like that have done that. I've been, "What is it? What are you at? What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, that's a good idea." Actually, it's like I've been in the industry now for 25 years. I'll watch people do certain exercises and go, I never thought about doing it like that because I actually can now change the technique slightly and it will make it work slightly differently. And these are just things that happen, you know. It's yeah, I think we need to kind of get past the thought process of everybody that's coming over to speak to you is it's a bad reason. It's not. It's sometimes you know, unfortunately, as I said, you can't sort of can't put out for this that 2% of weirdos and assholes that that are sort of frequent in gyms, but the majority of people are pretty decent and we're there to help you and help push you through and get you through your sessions.
Yeah, and if you're unsure, I would definitely go and speak to a member of staff and be like, "Can you show me how to do this first?" Because they
Yeah,
normally are happy to get in conversations as well. There we
yeah,
go. Muscle weighing more than fat. Now, obviously, muscle weighing more than fat, like a pound of fat and a pound of muscle weighs a pound, but muscle is a bit more dense than fat, isn't it, Andy?
yeah. So things like that is um, when a pound of fat and a pound of muscle will fit into clothing differently as well. So that's kind of why people think that it weighs different, but it's not. It fits clothing or fits certain things differently, you know. So
Take,
it's
takes up less space. It can make you
yeah,
more toned, Andy, more toned.
that's word.
Yes. Yeah, leaner and more toned. Um, so it isn't that it weighs more, but if you have, I've just looked actually because I wasn't sure on a percentage, and it says it's 18% more dense. So it
Yeah,
will look less. So it's 18%. So it's going to take up less space. That's basically it.
yes, bonus.
I don't think we need to say any more on that, do we?
No, sounds
Just like
good.
no. And then the final one is cardio burns more fat. And Andy loves cardio, big cardio guy, really likes it. But
Hardy, no.
but the thing to remember with this is that with cardio, if we're talking about energy balance, you are going to be burning energy when you're doing cardio. With your strength training, you might not see the energy burn in that sense, but your muscles are building, repairing after the workout. So it's completely different, but you can't
Yeah,
really measure the two together, can you, like that, Andy?
yeah, and also like we kind of have to. The biggest one with that is we need to stop looking at training, regardless of what it is, if it's cardio
Yeah,
or resistance training, as a method of burning calories. That's not what it's for.
100%.
It's
No.
not what it's for, you know. cardiovascular training is the benefits of that, regardless of calories, is obviously things like cardiovascular function, heart function, all these really important things. Resistance training, you'll get cardiovascular and heart function benefits from resistance training, but obviously you will also build lean muscle, which obviously in turn helps all these things as well. So if you can tie them together nicely, there's, I think gone are the days, hopefully, of sort of coaches and trainers looking down their nose at certain ways of training, certain modalities of training. I know for us, I know somebody who's a cardio bunny could do with putting some more resistance training into their schedule, but also in the same way, these meatheads like myself need to put a little bit more cardio into their training, and you get the match of both of them.
At least you're doing your cardio in your football sessions, and you go for
I've
walks with
actually
your
started
dog.
doing some. I've started doing
Yeah.
some conditioning sessions at the end of my workouts now as well. So just very similar to the kind of like the high rock stuff that a lot of folk are doing just now. Chucking in a bit of skier, grower alongside some other stuff, and it just, do you know what? For me, it's more about I find going for a run extremely boring. It's just monotonous. Like even outside, great, but I failed to last 3 minutes. I can make a very good joke about failing to last 3 minutes in other
Is that
aspects
what you?
of life, but we're not going to go there. So having something like a skier or a rower or something like that, I can do. It's more. I find it not more entertaining. That's a horrible thing to think about cardio, but I find
Type
it
2
it
fun.
keeps me it keeps me switched on a bit more because I'm jumping from one bit of kit to the next bit of kit, and then I maybe chuck some abs in amongst it as well, and just work it as a circuit. And it doesn't make me sit and go, I just want to beat my head off a wall because I'm fucking bored. So yeah,
And what?
I wish I liked running. I wish I wish it. Well, I don't, but I
Well,
do. I wish I liked
running,
running.
running for me, I liked it more because I put a book on. Like if I'm running in a steady state way,
Mm,
I'll put a book on, and I listen to that book, and I'm more tuned in with that than the fact that I'm dying. So
yeah.
it's not like
So
that. But yeah, in the gym, I
running
wouldn't
for
want to
running
run.
for me running for me either needs to have a football at the end of the place I'm running to, or somebody to kick. And if you see me running without either of those things, I would start running as well because something's chasing me. That's the only reason you're going to get me to run. So
But
if you see me running and there's not a football or somebody with a football kit on that's going to get volleyed, start running because it's not looking good. The
yeah,
zombie apocalypse is happening. Get out there.
but the main thing, the reason that I would do cardio, apart from heart health as well, obviously, and there's that, is I get an endorphin, I get a bit of a boost from doing it. My mood is boosted. And to be honest, at the end of a workout, I will quite often schedule in just even for, not for me, for clients and so on, if they're not doing loads of cardio outside, if they're running all the time, I wouldn't necessarily do this. But if they are not, just doing a normal amount of cardio outside, I'd put it in mainly so that after the workout, they're feeling like they've worked hard. They're getting a 5 minute boost of endorphins there, feeling like they're finishing a bit sweaty. Because often we can do a strength workout and we might have worked our muscles really hard, but I think there's still that feeling that you should be tired afterwards. And you're not
Yeah,
necessarily going to be tired in the same way that you'd be tired after a run or a football match or anything like that. So you can kind of just do that short bit of time and you'll get that like, oh, that was a good workout feeling, but you
yeah.
also have worked your strength. So I do that as well. But I like the high rock style because of the fact that you're switching it up all the time as well. But no,
That's it, isn't it?
cardio isn't burning. It is down to energy balance. Andy and I have spoken about this before, but you don't, there's a danger to seeing cardio as a way of losing weight. And one of the reasons is because it's not going to be a healthy way to do it, because what happens if you can't do that cardio anymore, firstly. Secondly, it can make you hungrier, the rungaries that we were chatting about earlier. You are burning more energy if you're not like eating a bit more as well as you need to. You're going to get hungrier, which actually can stop any weight loss from happening. And see, like, there's so much more to it, and you're gonna resent those things so much if you're only doing it thinking that you're going to get thinner because you're doing it. do what you enjoy
Yeah,
with cardio. I think do it in a way you enjoy it, but just be aware that health wise, it is part of the picture. I'm afraid, Andy.
yeah. That's it, isn't it? It's we have to remember that this is a the whole thing is a jigsaw with resistance training, nutrition, cardiovascular exercise, there's sleep and recovery. This is a big jigsaw that we need to work out where the pieces go, where they fit for you, and how they fit for you, and what the picture looks like at the end of it. That's basically what we need to look at it like. There is no picture that's going to be the same for everybody, and all the pieces are going to be different for everybody. It just works out. But at the end of the day, everybody has a jigsaw that they need to finish. That's how we need to look at it. So the sooner you get understand that, the better. Where all these pieces fit is down to you. What the picture is or the jigsaw is down to you. That's the goal at the end of the day, and it's about putting those pieces in place.
I like the analogies you're using there, Andy, with
I
jigsaws and
might, I
so
might,
on.
I might do that as a post actually.
Yeah,
Now I'm
maybe
thinking
maybe
about it, I'm like, oh, that's actually quite a nice one.
maybe I need to clip that for you as a
I,
Andy, Andy with his jigsaw. Yeah, it is
the
part.
Andy, the
Yeah,
Andy analogy.
yeah. And if you've got a training focus that's more kind of running based, then you still want to do your strength, but the balance might be slightly
Absolutely,
different.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
I'm not
exactly.
going to
That's
get you started because that would be a whole other podcast on it. But Andy loves the term functional athlete.
it.
I need one of
Fun.
like that QI is it where if you say the wrong thing it goes like that or
Ah,
whatever.
yeah,
I think we need that for all
functional.
the Andy's words that he doesn't like. Functional fitness is just
Literally just be
being
beep.
it's just
Everything's
normal
getting
fit.
beeped out.
Yeah. Functional fitness is just normal fitness. Like it's just being able to be strong and strong enough and fit enough. Some people would
Well,
say jack of all trades,
that's it.
master of none, which is like
Yeah,
me.
function is determined by what you need the function for, is by what the
Yeah.
goal is at the end of the day. I
And
think
Andy's
that's
always got to push lots of things away from his body, haven't you, Andy, in life?
exactly
Really
pushing
heavy
lots of
things.
stuff just to get my pecs bigger. That's the function.
That's the function. Yeah, Andy's function is aesthetic. That's fine. It does the job. Yeah. Okay, well that's the last of the questions. Have you got anything else you want to add, Andy?
No, as normal, if you need to get a hold of us, we are on Instagram. Ruth is at RuthMacFit. I
Very
am
good.
Andy_Wolf. You can catch us on there. You can give us a shout on the social media stuff if you've got any questions for the podcast. Obviously, we would love if you give us a 5-star review. That's always good because it means that we can be more viewable for other people that may find this interesting. And if you've listened to it, screenshot your podcast, like it, share it, stick it on Instagram, stick it on Facebook, and tag us in it, and it means that we can share it as well.
And if there's anything you want us to cover as well, because we're always open to suggestions on areas to cover. If there's something that
Absolutely.
you've been wondering, some of these myths on their own could be full podcast episodes because there's
Yeah.
so much nuance in them. But on the whole, I think we've gone over a little snapshot in each area. But thank you very much for the suggestions, mainly Andy's
Yes.
lovely followers there that have come in with a fair few. And we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Ciao.